mission: end, silence the stigma and shame about
suicide loss, ideation, and mental health. Please, won't you join me?
Welcome to Suicide Zen Forgiveness, the podcast that shares powerful stories of suicide loss, ideation, and mental health in order to break the silence, stigma, and shame. Our mission is to encourage empathy for those experiencing these challenges. Every narrative serves as a beacon of hope on to touch lives and inspire resilience. Won't you join me in this journey as we share stories to help others to find hope? Please note this podcast is for educational purposes and may contain triggering content. If you're grieving or experiencing mental health issues, please reach out to your local suicide hotline or mental health office for immediate help. And now, let's start the show.
It is so lovely to be back. I am really excited to share with you today someone who I've only met recently. Julie Fairhurst is on the other side of the country from me. But I want to tell you something. Not only are we going to talk about her story, but I want to mention first and foremost that Julie takes lots of women and shares their stories as well in book compilations of other people's stories. And I have to tell you, I know how hard it is and how much work goes into putting a book together. I wanted to be sure and say that because she has a whole series of these books, and I think it is the most incredible way to get your story out there and make sure that you have the opportunity to offer hope to somebody else. We'll be sure and let you know how to get a hold of Julie. As usual, all the information will be below. But that said, I'm going to let Julie give us a little more information about her, because I think she'll do it justice. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for asking me to be here. It's a privilege and I appreciate it very much. So I'm Julie Fairhurst, of course, and I'm in British Columbia in Canada, born and raised here. I have 34 years background in sales, marketing, and promotion. And so that took up most of my career. But in 2016, I started getting burnt out. It just was a really tough job. It took a lot of the energy, 24/7, and I loved it. Absolutely loved it. But I started to get burnt out. And so I started investigating, what am I going to do? What am I going to do with the next phase of my life if I don't do this? And I found it I was frustrated and I was searching. And then one night I had a dream and it was very profound. So I don't know where I was, but there was this white, bright light. I wasn't dying. I was definitely just asleep. And I was being told in my dream, okay, it's time for you to go back now. And I remember feeling anxious. And I said to whoever this person was, I don't want to go back. I want to stay here with you. And then I was told, no, you're not. You had to go back. You're not finished yet. So then I remember saying, but I don't know my purpose. And then I was told, you are your purpose. And in my dream, I'm thinking, that makes sense. My purpose should be myself, but that's not really helpful. And as I was waking up, I remember just feeling so anxious. And I said, but I don't know what to do. And as I awoke, one word was in my brain, and the word was right. I get shivers. Right now, I get shivers again. And so I thought, logically, what I should do, seeing as I have been in sales for 34 years and very successful, is that I should write sales books. And so I did start to write sales books. When burnt out on it, the last thing you want to do is, I don't know, like I coach salespeople now and I love it. But back then I was just like, I felt, it wasn't in my heart. And so in 2019, my husband and I decided to move out of the city and more into a little quieter community, which we love. And on the day we were moving, my 24-year-old niece dies. She died on the streets of Vancouver from a fentanyl overdose. And it made me really angry. And the risk made me out of course as well, but just really, I just angry because I felt that her death should not have happened. And what I thought about was we had generational trauma in my family. So my grandparents were quite bad alcoholics. My mom, alcoholics, my dad, drugs. Pass that along. I've got two brothers that are drug addicts. There's four of us, or I'm sorry, five of us in our family. And then one of my severe drug addict brothers, this is his daughter who passed away. And she's at 24 and she's a single mom with a little guy. So I just could see this pattern that has been happening in our family. Lucky for me, years ago, I was able to realize what was going on and I got out of it. But for my siblings, they didn't. So I was, after the funeral, I was lying in bed. I was awake. I wasn't dreaming. I was looking up at the ceiling and I just thought to myself, how my mom could have got the trauma out of her body because she had some heavy trauma that she was dealing with, which was the reason for the alcoholism. And I understood that then, and I certainly understand it now. But there was no healing. There was no attempt to heal. There was shame and guilt and just silence. Nobody ever talked about it. And so I thought if it could have been able to, and she's passed away now, but if she could have done something, then maybe it would have been better for us and so on. And so in the morning, I woke up and I thought, I need to write a book. And so I called up 13 of my girlfriends and I've got a bunch of stepsisters and we wrote our very first book for women like me. And I published it December of 2019. And now as today we have, I got to look at my list because I forget. We have 35 books in total now.
Sure.
And I've helped over 160 women who have written their stories. Now, some of those books are my own books. I do have some sales books and those kinds of things. But in total, as of today, we've got 6 books. So it's been very exciting. I've been very busy. In February of this year, I did retire from my sales and marketing position so that I could just throw myself. I've been doing it basically full time anyway, but now I won't be quite as tired because I don't have to worry about that other stuff. And it's fabulous. I love it. I love it. I love the women and I love their stories. And I think the only other thing right now, Elaine, that I would like to mention is that my program, no one pays. So I don't want there to be a financial barrier to anybody who wants to improve their life or who wants to share their story and pass along their healing lessons, their journey, so that other women can read them and hopefully they can be inspired to step themselves up and start to do a healing journey for themselves so we can hopefully stop all this generational stuff that's going on. In a nutshell.
Well, let me just say that is one hell of a nutshell. Okay. I knew there were a lot of them I didn't realize. We were talking 36 with the latest book. But absolutely incredible. What I want people not to skip over, she does this for people. It doesn't make them pay. Take that in for a second. I told you this was going to be a very exciting interview. Let me say my condolences on the loss of your niece. That is heartbreaking, more so in how she went, because you're absolutely right. We don't need to lose people to drugs. I have to stop there because you glossed over the fact that there is generational trauma. There are generations of that in your family. And you got yourself out of, I don't think you give yourself enough credit. That's a stopping moment. That's a stop. Take a bow. You beat the odds. You got out of that generational trauma. Like, let's just take a moment here and yay, Julie. That
You.
is not easy from one addict to another. That is not easy. And it takes so much to do that, more so from a long line of addiction. Because addiction, whether it's alcohol or drugs or whatever, it is, I think it is exponentially increased by the number of people within your family that
Mhm.
are suffering. That's all. Every time you and I talk, there are just moments where you take my breath away. The sheer goodness in you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Um,
Those eyes.
you are so welcome because I've been doing this podcast now religiously since, as in on time, since the beginning of 2021. But I started in 2018 and I have had guests, lots and lots of guests who all have a variation on this kind of story. And you actually said, in terms of your mom, no, the silence, the guilt, the shame. That's where we, as a baby boomer, we got stuck in that silence. We passed it on to Gen X, and
Mhm.
they have passed some of it on to the millennials. Not so easy with Gen Z. Gen Z are, God help us, I think they are wonderful because they are much more likely to speak about those things that we all held taboo.
Yes.
And as much as it can be difficult to hear, it's actually incredibly important.
Mhm.
And I think they could be our saving grace because in order to alleviate a problem, we have to first acknowledge it
Yes,
before we can address it.
absolutely. And I think that is the biggest fear.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mo-
Absolutely.
More than anything. Even I have what I found with all the women that I've been working with is that there's a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, and a lot of hiding and a lot of silence. And not all, but a lot of the women have come to realize that it's big, of course, but it's not as big as they made it in their minds. And once they were able to acknowledge that, and then, of course, tell their story, the shame, the guilt, they come to an understanding and realize there's nothing to be guilty of. There's no reason to feel shame. But those are the things that stop all of us.
Yeah. And shame is such a beast.
Yeah.
Wears so many faces and takes on so much in order to keep you down. It's, I think, the worst thing that can get a hold of us because it's the toughest thing to break through.
Yes.
It is such a relief when we do, when we start to see that, yeah, it's not the Mount Olympus we assumed it was.
Hmm.
And there will always be the naysayers. There will always be someone who I believe is stuck in their own pain and will lash out just because.
Yeah.
That's about them, it's not about you.
No.
And learning that when you're deep in shame is one of the hardest things.
We take on all that guilt. We take on everything. We take on everybody's problem. Especially
Absolutely.
men. Men. And that's why I've had my son says, why don't you do a men like me? And I said, why don't you do a men like me? Because I'm a woman. So I understand women. I love you all you guys, but I don't
Yep.
really understand everything about you, but I understand women. And we've got to give it up. We have to, and we need to give it up for our families because I believe as much as men or husbands and fathers are important for our families, they're critical, but we're the glue. And we, not only are we the glue, but and I've done a lot of reading on this, and I'm not a professional about all of this, but I've done lots of reading. And in it, it seems that when we as women start to heal, people around us start to heal. It just flows. And I don't know quite why that is, but it's got to do, of course, with us. So it's critical that we fix ourselves. We get over whatever it is that's holding us back. Because whatever's holding you back, if you don't fix it, it's going to hold your kids back and your grandkids back. It's just normal and just natural way of doing it. So it's so important that we do our best to try to overcome.
I absolutely believe that. And it's interesting because this came up so often. I have a spiritual mentor I've been working with since 2004. And she would do monthly meetings with lots and lots of people where we did meditation and visualization. Then she offered teaching. She explained that although the men were the hunters and they would go off and they provided the sustenance for the whole tribe, the women were the keeper of the flame.
No,
And in order to keep that fire going, the women were totally in charge. And it was the women who would invite or not the men to the fire to be really part of the tribe. And when you really think about it, over a couple of years, I come to understand that fire is the central beating heart of the tribe. In those days, without fire, you were not just prey for the animals around you, you were prey for the cold and the heat and the water and the whatever. And the fire kept you alive. It helped with all of those things. So being in charge of that center, that was the heart.
yes. Wow. I
And the
love that.
women,
I love it.
yeah. Yeah, over the years, I've come to more and more understand exactly what that means and how deep that is. But part of that is being the beating heart of the tribe and having to take into account everyone around. Women are much more likely to look at the root of an issue. Eventually, through the shame, through the guilt, you'll always dissect it in your head. Once you get it out on paper or tell someone, the power the negative has over you becomes less. Absolutely.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And I tell my ladies, because I do have, before we do a book launch, I get ladies, even in this last book launch that I did last week, I have ladies contacting me going, I'm really nervous about this. Oh my goodness. Like now everybody's going to know. And I'm like, that's right. Everybody's going to know. So guess what? There's no more shame. There's no more hiding. And it's out there. So not only is writing therapeutic, and you can do that privately. You don't have to put it in a book that you're going to publish. Journaling and all of those other kinds of things is very therapeutic for us. But when you put your story in a book that's being published and it's going out there for your friends and family to see, then your community to read, the world to read, the shame and the guilt's gone. And I can honestly tell you, I follow, because we do this, of course, online, and I follow my writers and I'm watching for what's being said to them through social media. It's always so positive and so beautiful. And people are just like, you're so courageous. And other people, I didn't even know that about you. Oh my goodness, you amaze me. All of those kinds of things. And it's so uplifting. And recently, I have a lady that's in her 70s, and she has recently been writing in a couple of my books. And she just wrote in this last one for the launch. And she messaged me and she said, Julie, I want you to know my life has changed since I met you. And it's just about releasing.
The lid off the secret. You know that old adage? You're only as sick as your secret.
And I believe that sure, when we're younger, it's easier to keep the secrets because it's not so full in here. But when we get older, the cup runneth over. And now what are you going to do with it? Because it's almost as we get older, the universe says, I think you need to deal with this now. And then you deal with it or you don't. And if you don't, hopefully you're in a fairly healthy mindset and that kind of thing. But if you're not, it can take you down. And unfortunately, when you go down, whether you mean it or not, other people go down with you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, all the old adages, but no one stands alone.
Yes.
We
yes.
really don't.
No.
And whatever has an effect on you will have an effect on your family
Yes.
and the people around you.
yes.
Just by nature, I want to say osmosis, it is. We've come to terms, most people, that we are energy. Everything is energy. So it only makes sense that it ebbs and flows through those that we are most connected to.
A couple weeks ago, I went on there's a lady in the Netherlands, and she wrote in one of my books actually a couple of years ago. And so she has now a writing group of ladies in the Netherlands. And so she asked if I would come on and just do a bit of a training. And I said, of course I would. I'd be happy to. And one of the ladies asked me, she said, I'm writing my story. And I talk to my friends and I talk to my family and I say to them, why don't you write your story? Why don't you? And they go, oh, no, never, couldn't do that. And so she said to me, what can I do to get them to write? And I said, there's nothing that you can do except be a positive role model for them. Show that you can share your story in a positive light and just be, they'll see it. And they're going to want what you want. And I see that in my program. I have so many people who contact me after a book launch because they're like, hey, I didn't know about this. I want to tell my story. I've got this, or I've got a friend who really needs to tell her story. And so that's all we can do is just be a light for other people.
Yeah, because we can't make others do anything.
No.
Okay. The only one we have control over is ourselves. But what you do when you put your story out, when you lighten your own burden.
Yes.
Okay, here we go again. I'm the queen of adages all of a sudden. The proof is in the pudding. What they see, you become a different person.
Yes.
The light is there. You're not carrying that horrid weight anymore. And there is nothing, I think, more uplifting than being with someone who just is lit from inside. Somebody who you spend time with and you think, oh God, they just imbue me with energy. Being near them is wonderful. I feel such joy at spending time with that person. Once you let go of those secrets, once you get rid of it all, you get to be one of those people everybody wants to be with because they can feel the changes in you. And that's the best thing you can do for those around you. Because, yeah, they're going to say, I want that.
Yes.
I want to feel like that. I don't like that.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And I want to tell my story.
Yeah.
There's a common theme with all of my writers. I would like to say every single one of them, but I can't honestly say that. But it's very common with them. And that is if I can help just one person. Almost every single one of them says that to me, if not all of them. Julie, if my story just helps one person. Because at the end of so our stories are not ranting stories. They're not beating up on mom or society or the ex-husband or majority of stories. We can rant, but that's not what it's about. It's about telling your story and then having lessons at the end of the story as well. And a lot of times people are like, oh, my story is about if there's sexual abuse or this or that, or like lots of stuff that people have trouble talking about. But if you're going to tell your story, I'm going to do a one-on-one with you and we're going to soften that. So as an example, I have a young lady, a fabulous lady who wrote in the book that we just released this past week. And she almost pulled out because she said, she was talking about, she looked at her husband's phone one day and it's not in her nature to do it. Something told her to, and she looked at it and there's a picture of a naked person. That naked person happened to be a friend of hers who they all work. I won't say where they work, but they all worked at the same place.
Oh.
And so that was very traumatic for her. And so I said, okay, but we just need to go into the nitty gritties of all of that. You can say you looked at the phone. You can say that there was a picture, there was infidelity. We don't need to say all of the other things. And then we go into the story and her story really is about women helping her. So even though you might be out there thinking, oh, I don't want to talk about this, or I don't want to talk about that, that isn't her story. That's a little piece of what led to her story, but we don't need to focus on that. So when I'm speaking with women, we're getting down to everything, but I help them to come up with how to tell that story. And so her story is all about the kindness from her girlfriends, the kindness from her auntie checking in on her all the time, her mom and sister coming to stay with her after that happened. She almost lost her house, how her friends and family gathered around her to keep the house. That's the story.
The trauma, whatever occurred, is just the catalyst
Right.
for what unfolds.
Yes. Yes. And so I had another lady that wanted to talk about some issues with her father. There had been sexual abuse, physical abuse, that kind of thing. And her father's still alive. And I said, look, we don't need to specify. We can just say you were abused. We don't need to say my father sexually abused me. My father did this. You can just say in my home, I was abused. We'll talk a little bit about how you felt as a child growing up. And now we're going to go into the problems that it caused you in your adulthood. And then we're going to lead into how you've healed yourself from that. So again, we're keeping ourselves out of that hot water. We're doing our best not to cause issues or have family issues for people, but we can still tell the story and
Absolutely.
lead.
Yeah, it's not about the blame game. It's not about pointing fingers. It's about acknowledging the trauma. Then what came from that. And I love that every story ends on a positive note.
Yes. That's my one stipulation is we must have lessons at the end of your story for the readers. Some lessons sprinkled in there.
Yeah.
But that last paragraph, we want it to be, if you're feeling the way I was, if you experienced anything that I experienced, if I can fix it, if I can come out of it, if I can tell it, so can you. And it's so important. And I've gotten email from people all over the world, thousands of them, quite a few. And they say, Julie, I just read such and such a book. I just read so-and-so's chapter. And I just have to tell you that I read it and said, it's time to pick up my boot, get on with it. And then I had a grandmother from Mexico who contacted, because I had a girl write her story, and she was hit by a drunk driver. She's now a paraplegic. Her baby was only 2 months old at the time. Thank goodness baby's okay. But she's a paraplegic today, talks about the court case and everything that happened. And in her story, she actually gives forgiveness to this woman at court. When she did her victim impact statement, she said, I just want you to know that I forgive you. And you need to be forgiven because you have children. And since that time, that woman has actually passed away from drug abuse. But the lady that I dealt with, that's huge lessons in there about forgiveness. and through that whole story that she's able to tell.
And such a so incredible for her.
And when she told that story, her lawyer bought the book. So many people, and I saw the comments. You've inspired me. You're so courageous to tell this. And so it's just, oh, and my reason for telling you, sorry about that. So a grandmother from, oh, who, similar situation with her granddaughter, message to say, I've just read this story. And it was, she just wanted to say, thank you for having it written. And I
Yeah.
can so much to this story. So we don't know who are reading our book. We don't know who we've helped. We just need to know that it will help for anyone that does read them.
Interesting when we look back, okay, these are the kinds of things that have been part of humankind forever. Telling the story where you learn the lesson have always been part right from at the fire when they didn't have a lot of language, but they somehow got the message through that a lot of the lessons we have to learn haven't changed.
No.
But in telling the different stories of how you came to understand that lesson, how you got through to the other side, give somebody else maybe an opportunity to look at it from a slightly different perspective
Yes.
so that they too can find forgiveness or allow themselves to grieve and move on, or to allow whatever it is that they need at that point.
Yes.
But there really are, when it comes down to it, I can be very simplistic at times. There are really very few lessons. There are myriad ways to learn them. And the billions of humans that there are all find incredibly different ways to get to that place. And I think that's probably why now, more than ever, we need these books. And I'll go one farther and say the difference, I think, for men. I have lots of men guests on the program, but they're not the same. They don't often worry the same or are able to juggle the worry with the day-to-day things you just have to do.
Yes.
Men are better at putting things in little compartments and leaving them there until they get dusty.
Yes.
It's not as much of a, don't want to use the word chore, but if as women, we're always multitasking in our head. I don't care what people say, just the way it goes. Even when you're trying to stay on track, there's all those different things going on in your head. And I think it's good that we have those differences. But I think there are definitely men out there that could do this for other men. But I do applaud the fact that you are sticking on the woman track because it is what you know best.
No, for sure. And I just know from my own family the trauma that it caused. And it was mainly the females. So I'll just be very brief. My mother's trauma was that she was drunk driving and she killed her best friend in a car accident. And her best friend had a husband and 3 little girls. She never got over that. She never dealt with that. That happened when I was 10 years old. My mother never hugged me or any of my siblings after that car accident. She
Her
showed
penance.
she showed no emotion.
Penance.
Yes, she's punished herself.
Her self-directed penance. But that
Yes.
was her punishment.
Yes.
Oh my God.
And I
Oh,
understand. And even all my life, I got it. I understood it. It didn't make it, as a 10-year-old, it didn't make it any easier on me.
no.
But I did, as I grew into an adult, I understood. And I forgive her because what a thing to have to deal with. And that's the whole keep trying to keep it in the back, trying to push it back, keep it in the back of your mind. And I get it. It's horrendous to deal with. And you're absolutely right. I think we have more opportunity at this age, in this life, this year, 2024. I'm dealing with things because we are more open where my mom's society
Yeah.
was, or generation was, we don't talk about it a bit. And so who knows? We're all on a path. And I wouldn't probably be doing this if my mom didn't experience what she experienced.
Yeah.
And I'm very happy with who I am. And I love myself. And yeah, I have no issues in that arena at all. Took me some time to get there.
Oh,
But
yeah.
also, I don't dislike any of my family. I limit
Absolutely.
yeah, I limit my time with them. I'm not going over when somebody's all rubbed out, and so I'll just stay away. I still love them. And doesn't mean that I can't talk to them and I can't visit with them from time to time, but I know I'm smart enough to know that I need to limit myself because I can't have that influence on me or
Oh,
my
yeah.
it's all the same thing, like, I hear that a lot from other women too, is, "I don't wanna cut my family off." Well, you don't have to cut your family off, but you have to understand that your family is going to have an influence on you.
Yeah.
So, you need to cut them off, but you need to protect yourself and give a little bit of space and limit a little bit of your time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially when there is that type of influence. But I have to say, okay, you've done the work.
Yes.
Okay, that didn't come easy.
No, it
You
no.
you've done the work,
Yes.
and that in itself is so commendable.
When I just would like to make like, when I first started, you're back in my 30s, I was very ashamed of my family, very ashamed. And I remember doing a meditation and I wanted to connect, I wanted to see my anyway, it was this weird meditation I was doing. But I actually had in my meditation a steel rod about that big attached to my mother's stomach, my brother's stomach. It was the weirdest thing that, and I couldn't move it. And I was that attached to them.
Yeah.
Now, and as I healed, it got softer, that rod, and I would do that same meditation. And then it got to be like just a string. And now there's nothing there. So it can be done, people. But you're right. You're right. Ellen. It takes it, or Elaine, it takes work. It absolutely takes work.
And that's something I want to be sure that people understand. It's never instantaneous. Okay. My spiritual mentor used to think it was pretty funny because my answer, when you do meditations and you're trying to cut cords or you're trying to change things, my answer was, well, use a blowtorch, get rid of it all. No, it's not okay. You have to put some thought into it. And not only that, be done with love. And that was her one caveat. Didn't matter what I used, torches or lasers or whatever, but it had to be done lovingly for the better of all of us,
Yes.
not just me protecting me. Because even that being too selfish is not good and it doesn't help you either. It is about finding the best way that you can keep as much of what is your family as is safe for you.
Yes.
That won't always look the same
No.
or different people.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Family's family, and they're not going anywhere.
No, they're not. They
No.
will forever be family.
Exactly. And friends, it's like we try to protect our kids when they're little and say we shouldn't hang out with that person. But do we think about who we're hanging out with? Are any of our dear girlfriends energy suckers? Do we feel like we just want to go to bed after we've visited
Yeah.
them?
Yeah.
And just finding the best people that we can, the people that appreciate us, that they're out there. But
Oh,
until we
absolutely.
appreciate ourselves, we're going to just attract the energy suckers and the people who want this from us and that from us, and they're not giving in return.
No, and part of that, okay, like your mom making herself do penance, when you don't value yourself, then you're not expecting anyone else to either.
Right.
And that's what allows those kind of energy suckers and people who only have their own interests at heart, they will come in and you will repeat those types of people in your life for as long as you don't to love and understand yourself.
Yeah. Yes. My mom lived the same 30 days over and over again. The same time of the month, money runs out. The same time of the month, this was going on. Same time of the month, that's going on. And she didn't. And I say to other people, examine your life. Do you really want to live the same 30 days over and over for your entire life? Because if we're not careful, that's where we end up. And my two brothers, they lived the same 30 days over and over again. They get their welfare check, then they do this and they do that, then they run out of food, then they got to go do this, then they got to go do that. And they're just waiting for the first of the month again to start all over again. And that's sad.
It
That's
is.
a sad place to live because there is better. But it's very difficult sometimes for people to see better when you're in it, when you're drowning in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's why I say all we can really do is be a shining light. Don't judge people, just accept them, love them for the way they are, and just be a shining light. So as an example, so that they can see if and when they open their mind to it, that there is a better life out there for them.
And so people can know when they try to make that leap, because it is a leap. No matter what you're coming from, you are going to something better.
Yes.
It's a huge leap inside to surpass that fear. Not just do it anyway, but look for better people on the other side of that are there to support, not to knock you back down.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. I got a shiver. Ah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, humans are very complicated creatures. And yet, we are really simple
Yes.
in what we want.
Yes.
We want to be seen. We want to be heard. We want to know we matter.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think when we start to do that for ourselves, then we start to attract more and more of it. Yeah. The other thing about my mom is that she was never happy. Like I'm
No,
talking never happy. And years ago in my 20s, I got a promotion. And so I phoned my mom and said, "Hey, mom, guess what? I got a job promotion, blah, 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 blah." There was silence on the phone. And then she said, "You know what that beat brother of yours did?" And that was my moment when I went, there's no point in sharing this kind of stuff because it's not going to help and I just get my feelings hurt. So I stopped that. But my point in telling that is she lived her entire life like that because she was trapped. She had all that stuff trapped inside her and she couldn't get it out.
and along the same vein, when I started working with a spiritual advisor, I had spent almost 30 years basically as a victim. When I decided that that really needed to end, it wasn't very long after I started working with Trish that I remember coming into a group meeting and saying, "Oh, blah, blah, blah. And I met this really nice person and this other nice person and this other nice person." And she laughed and she said, "Wow, that's a lot of nice people." She looked at me very pointedly, really weird. Very, they've always been everywhere. If
Yeah.
you can't see past your victim mask, you're not going to see that.
No. And take it like when we're pregnant. All of a sudden, we see pregnant people everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Or you buy a new car and
Yeah.
Hyundai. All of a sudden, everybody's driving a Hyundai. But before you never noticed the Hyundais.
Oh,
So so it's exactly the same. We have to reach out and pick what we want for ourselves and say, I want to see more of this in my life. And if you focus on that, you will see more of that in your life. Just like
and
the great people.
yeah. And the most important thing, like every day, I'm so great for
Yes.
every single thing, every single person, single flower, every animal working on this fire. But everything else, I'm
Gratitude is definitely the way one of the easiest ways to get out of victimhood and
oh
to
yeah,
regret. And even no matter where you live, I remember being in my 20s and we had this icky carpet in this house we were renting. I used to jump from the bed over to the doorway because I didn't want to touch the carpet. I appreciated and I was grateful for my home
oh yeah,
and grateful for all of those things. So it doesn't matter where we come from or what environment we're living in right now. It's so important to be grateful for little things. Like you have a roof over your head, you have air to breathe. When I get off a plane in Vancouver, no matter where I've gone, I'll tell you that one of the first things I'm grateful for is that beautiful fresh air.
well,
So it can be little things. And like you say, you're driving in your car and oh, there's a bird and just so many. So we have things to be grateful for all around us. We just don't let ourselves see it.
it starts with opening your eyes inward.
Yeah.
Very fact that you did that, and then you take a breath. It's already two things to be grateful for. And I think it's a good place to wrap it, because I am very grateful for you. I am grateful for you as a guest. I am grateful for you as someone who helps people share their stories, because I firmly believe it's not are you helping one or two. I think you're helping every one of the 150 women that you have put in those books so far.
Oh,
I know that.
thank you very much. I appreciate
Oh,
that.
well. I want to say thank you so much. Julie Fairhurst is our guest today. You'll be able to find all of her details, all of the information where you two can get a hold of her. And for those of you that are ready to hear your stories, womenlikeme.story.com is where you should go to see when you get your opportunity to put your story in Julie's book. Like I say, every meeting, thank you so much to you, the audience, my guest, and make the very best of your today, every day. I'm going to see you next time. Bye for now.
Thank you for being here for another inspiring episode of Suicide Zen Forgiveness. We appreciate you tuning in. Please subscribe and download on your favorite service and check out SZF's YouTube channel or Facebook community. If you have the chance to leave a 5-star rating or review, it'd be greatly appreciated. Please refer this to a friend you know who may benefit from the hope and inspiration from our guests. Suicide Zen Forgiveness was brought to you by the following sponsors. Truel Social Media, the digital integration specialists. Let them get you rockin' page 1 in the search results. Canada's keynote humorist Judy Croon, motivational speaker, comedian, author, and stand-up coach at Second City, Judy has been involved for over a decade in the City Street Outreach Program in Toronto.
The ultimate podcasting pack. This is great for you if you're just starting your podcast or if you've been running it for a while. It's filled with tools, templates, and trainings for starting, growing, and monetizing your podcast. Get access to time-saving systems and strategies for accelerating your process at each step. Find new connections and collaborations in the uplifting podcasting community. I look forward to seeing you there.
Do you have a story to share? Do you know someone you think would be a great guest? Please go to szf42.com. And for our American listeners, that's szf42.com. Thank you for listening, and we hope to see you again.